Hi, everyone. I am Christina. I'm your librarian, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about how to use AI tools in your business research process. So, part of my job as a librarian, I get to work with students when we're doing researching into business plans, into strategy projects, looking at industries and markets, and trying to understand more about the information that's available so that we can make smarter business decisions. Whenever we're having consults or talking about how to do that research, AI tools inevitably comes up. We're always thinking about how can we use AI tools to make this job easier or to make it faster or more efficient. And one of the things that I've noticed is that even though we all recognize that AI has the potential to do that, and it has the potential to really revolutionize the way that knowledge work is done, that the way so much of our work is done, not that many people are actually using it in their daily activities. So I started thinking about why. What are the barriers to that? And I've come up with three main things that I think are the problems. One is a problem of vision, not being able to understand or envision or imagine what it can actually do. If it's really hard to think about what this thing can do for me, it's not going to be really attractive to want to try. So you'll see that in places where there is a really clear use case, there's a high level of adoption. People who have coding is a fantastic use case for using AI, and there's a really high adoption rate in that world. In places where people have a lot of time to experiment, so in high schools, colleges, middle schools, elementary schools, where they have a lot of time to play around with it, they also have a really high adoption rate. But people who don't have a really clear, well-defined use for it, that barrier of not really knowing exactly what it's going to be able to do for them becomes really, really problematic. The second one is process. And that's for people who maybe they have an idea of how they want AI to help with their research or help with their job, but they don't really know where to start. They don't know which tool to use. There's a million and one tools out there, and there's a new one coming every single day, promising to make your job easier. But saying use AI to automate your tasks or use AI to help you with your use case isn't really helpful because it's not as specific. It's not a specific enough direction in order to be useful. So that's another problem, another barrier. The third one is the value. Is this going to be any good? Am I going to be happy that I spent my time on this? We have all come across AI created output or content that feels less than valuable, less than useful. Maybe it was really, really vague or super general or very basic, such that it doesn't really seem to be worthwhile. Maybe there's some inaccuracies in it. It's not true. And so it feels like maybe this isn't worth my time. So if I can't picture what this is going to do, I don't know how to start, even if I could picture it, and I'm not sure it's going to be worth it. Those are three very valid reasons that people aren't going to try these using AI tools. We're going to try and address some of those today. So before I get started, I want to just set some expectations, do a little level setting here on what we're going to do in the next 45 minutes. This is going to be a way of, I want to give you a way of approaching research using AI tools. And there's going to be a show and tell with some examples that hopefully you can see your place in how to use these tools. And it's going to be a really good place to start. It is not going to be a list of perfect prompts to use in any situation. Plug and play and go on your way. It's not going to be a list of the best AI tools. As I mentioned, there are thousands of AI tools out there that you can use. And so a list like that that's constantly changing and is constantly evolving, on top of which everyone's needs are different, that's not really applicable. Finally, it's not an invitation to turn off critical thinking. These Everyone recognizes that these tools are going to be really revolutionary, but it's really important that in order to use them, in order to use them to their best and highest potential, it really requires your attention. It requires your engagement with those tools. So this is what we're going to do today. And let me introduce you to someone I will reference more than once today. This is Ethan Mollick. If you don't get anything else out of this webinar today, this one, Take This Thing Home. One useful thing is a Substack that's written by Ethan Mollick. He is a professor out at Wharton. And he was a very early adopter of using AI in really creative ways for business. That's his area of expertise: entrepreneurship, strategy, business. So he's using these tools in the context, in the same kind of context that we are looking at these tools. A lot of things are really, really applicable. So I think that this Substack and Ethan Mollick is a really good source of some of the smartest thinking that's going on about how AI is changing our world, particularly from that business point of view. So I highly, highly encourage you to go over to the Substack. One useful thing: subscribe, read a couple of articles. I will point out a couple that I think would be really good, starting with this one. So that first barrier, that thing that we were thinking about of how can you envision how to use this tool, let's get into this question. And Ethan wrote this wonderful essay, this article about 15 times to use AI and 5 times not to. It's a really great essay, really very readable, very easy. So I encourage you to go read it. But I do want to point out 2 things. One of those is the times to use it, and one not so great time. So one time to use it is when you need quantity, when you need variety, when you need to get over a mental block or spark your creativity. AI is excellent at that. When you need a second opinion, or you need to bounce something off of another, 2 ideas against each other, follow a path. It's really, really strong at doing that. It is not so great when you need to become the expert at something. It's not so great for doing that deep knowledge acquisition that generates the kind of expertise. And he says this much more eloquently than I can, but essentially his point is that there are some tasks in your career, in your life, that you want to become an expert at, and the effort is the point. The work that you're doing in acquiring that knowledge is the point of that work. And so AI can help you plan how to acquire that knowledge, and really give you some strategies and help you organize that work. But the actual work is still going to be there for you. So one thing that so go read this article. And one note I read, one line I read that I think really encapsulates that, or really helps communicate that, is that AI tools are great at thinking with you, and they're not so great if you want them to think for you. Because the tools are so shifting and amorphous and their functions are so plastic, it takes an investment of time and attention and curiosity in order to make it the most useful for you. I've read in a couple of different places, including on Dr. Mollick's blog, that it takes anywhere from about 10 to 12, all the way up to 30 to 40 hours of time invested in just developing enough familiarity with the tools and getting practice in them to really be able to use them in a way that's going to serve you. That's a huge time investment. That's, anywhere from a couple of days, a day or two, to 3 or 4 days of playing around with this. That's a lot to ask. And I think that everyone recognizes that. And that is one of those explanations for why more people aren't using AI. They don't have that time lying around that they can do this. So go read that article. I think it explains it far better than I can. But when we're looking at these tools, try and get this mindset that you're using these AI tools to help think with you, not for you. So now we will go to some of those imaginary places, or those things that we can imagine AI doing for us. These are a few ideas, and again, this is not a comprehensive list. There are just infinite number of things that it could be, but here are 5 that we can look at in the context of business research that I hope will really resonate with you, or make sense in a way that will help you think, oh, that's something that I could do with AI. So this first one is ideation. This is one of the ones that he really mentions in that article about when you're in that entrepreneurial space and you're trying to develop a business idea. AI is excellent at helping you tease out nuances, or come up with different variations, or think about scope in different ways. It's really good at brainstorming. It can be really helpful in that fashion. In terms of looking at background research for industries and markets, it can be very good at helping guide your thinking, even when it can't give you a direct source. It can help you identify what it is that you need to know. one of the pitfalls of AI, and one of those things that kind of can turn people off of it, is some of those low value, low level generic content traps that sometimes it can give. Um, it's really good at making something, organizing that work, but it may not be the substitute for doing some of that actual research. It can be really, really helpful in doing helping you understand competitive analysis, understand the landscape, understanding what to pay attention to when you're doing a competitive analysis, and then finally doing actual analytical tasks for you, or doing setting up frameworks that you can do. So most of these tools that you will find, even at the paid tiers, they will not have access to some proprietary databases like Statista or One Business or IBISWorld, three tools that our active students do have access to. So when it's doing publicly available data like this, some of that analysis and some of that background research is excellent as a guide to point you in the right direction and tell you where you need to go. So now let's go take a look at how we might do this, like where to start, that second barrier, what I'm going to do. And I know I said that this is not going to be a list of the best AI tools to use, but I want to give you at least a place to start, how to approach it. And here are four to try. There's Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT. And how did I pick them? My friend Ethan, he just recently wrote this post about good tools that are good generalist tools. Three tools that will meet the needs of most people. So I think that's a really good place to start. He picked Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT. I also like Perplexity, so I threw that in so that we would have four to look at. And again, go and read this article so you'll understand what the criteria was. Interestingly, in this article, in the comments section, one of his readers put together this interactive chart that's showing how to compare some of these different tools kind of across the board so that you can look at them and make some determinations about which one is going to be right for you. One of the most important attributes that I think is really useful is, does the tool that you're using have web access? Which ones can actually go out and search for current information and find things that are useful to you? So Claude, one of the ones that he recommends, doesn't have web access. Its last input into this model was, I think, in April or May of 2024. So that's one factor to consider when thinking about using Claude versus thinking about using some of these other ones. It is important to, well, one thing that I recommend is to, when you're getting started with this, try two or three of them. Pick a couple of tools, use similar prompts, see what you get back to get your bearings on how the tools work, which ones appeal to you most. They do have personalities. They respond in slightly different ways. There may be one that appeals to you more. So a really good practice, a best practice, is to try a couple before you settle in on one that you're really going to use regularly or more often, or graduate to a paid tier. Okay, let's go back to that vision and trying to imagine how AI tools can be of use to us. So what I've done here is I've made up three personas, three use cases that can help us illustrate uses for these tools. These are all three in the same space, all in the software industry, but they have different levels of complexity and different needs, different things they're looking for. So there's this app developer with a dream, and she's a person who has an idea for an audience. She wants to develop a mobile puzzle game for fandoms, but that doesn't have the really kind of specific detail that she would need to make it into a business plan. It's just a very young, new idea. That second one is a business development person. So it's a non-technical person who is working at a startup and wants to understand what shifts might be happening, what he might want to do in order to fine-tune his sales strategy in the short term, just the next few quarters, and help with short-term planning. And then finally, you have the strategy consultant. This is a person who is working at a fintech software. It's a startup company and wants to look a little bit farther out, wants to look in that 2 to 5 year range and think about long-term strategy. So we have three different people doing three different things. And in order to ground this just a little bit more, I'm going to go through and talk about what these people would do with traditional tools without AI, so you can see how AI can maybe streamline or help or augment their business strategy, their business research strategy. Okay, so for that app developer with a dream, she's really in that forming stage of this idea, and she'd probably sit down with her peers or with a mentor, with somebody in her target audience group, and talk about ideas for this game that she has, and see if it's something that could resonate with her. She also would look into some of the marketplaces for these games, so app stores, and see what's trending, what things people are really interested in, what things people don't like about the games that are popular or wish they could be a little bit more popular. She might look into information about the demographic that she's targeting, companies or people who have had really successful games in the past. Anything like that that would help her understand at this early level what she might want to do next. For the business development person, is looking for shifts in the market. So he'd be looking for market research. They would probably look into a tool like Statista to see if there are any market analyses that they would have access to. They would look for some publicly available ones if there were any. Those might be a little bit harder to find. But they might also look for finance news. They would look at their competition to see what's happening. They might look for some economic forecasts to see if capital is going to be easier or harder to get and what kind of influence that would have on his customers. They might look into some of their bigger customers and see what's going on with them. So that's what that second person would do. The strategy consultant, that third person, that's a person who probably has access to the kinds of proprietary tools that I mentioned. So they will have access to something like Statista. They will have access to something like One Business and IBIS World and private industry reports. They're absolutely going to use those. They're going to look at economic forecasts and country forecasts. They're going to be applying analytical frameworks to their work to try and make some of those long-term decisions. So these are what some of those traditional things that you would, how you would approach this research if you didn't have access to an AI tool. So now that you do, how do we go about this? We'll start with this first one, with this ideation. She has this idea for a fandom-based premium puzzle game. That is not a fully developed idea. What she knows is that she wants to develop a puzzle game that's aimed at what she is guessing is an underserved segment of the community of gamers. She's thinking of women who are aged between 12 years old and 30, 35, 40, who are really actively participating in different fandoms, in pop music fandoms, in book talk fandoms, in crafting fandoms, because what she wants to do is connect this game into something that they're already really engaged with and leverage that. So she's thinking about all of this and knowing that she wants to do something with it and leverage that affinity that people already have. And that's kind of all that she knows. She doesn't have a problem that she's solving yet. She doesn't know exactly which fandom she wants to target. She doesn't know what the value would be or how to really refine this idea and dive down in. So instead of going to talk to friends or go look at the marketplace, she's going to use ChatGPT. So here's what she's going to be doing. This is her strategy, is to give a brain dump to ChatGPT and then triage the results and refine and then go on to next steps. So I'll give you a minute to read this prompt here, but there are 4 things to really pay attention to. And this prompt has been developed, a little bit developed. Well, I'll show you how that I did that in that second example, but I wanted to dive right in with the first one. So there's 4 things to kind of see here. This context and framing area, the target response of here's what I want, here's who I am, here's what I want, here's the kind of output that I want, here's how I want you to present me the content so that I can do the next step, the next step that requires my judgment. Let's edit that bit out. So here's the output that I want that will allow me to use my judgment to take that next step. And then she wants them to put it in ranked order so that she can pay more attention to the stuff that ChatGPT thinks of at the top of her list and less at the bottom. So I will pause and let you read this for a second. One thing I want to note, hopefully you're done. One thing I want to note is that it's really helpful when you're using these tools like this, when you're approaching this research, to think of it in a slightly different way than you've thought of search engines or tools in the past. This is very much more like a conversation than it is a input something and get an output. So she's going to be asking these questions and responding to what the tool gives her back so that she can go back and forth and develop an idea over a couple of prompts rather than just one. There is a new-ish feature in ChatGPT that allows it really highlights the difference between searching and reasoning. So they have this tool that allows you to say, I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you this prompt. I want you to think about it and then give me a response back. And that's a really big distinction. It's really different than the way we approach using search engines. And it's really different than the way most people approach using AI tools, certainly at the beginning. It's very tempting to treat them the way we treat search engines, but they're not the same thing. So have that conversation. Change your information seeking behavior from looking at an encyclopedia or looking on the internet to really interacting with it. Okay, so ChatGPT is going to ruminate on this for a minute and return what she asked for. So here is, it thought for a few seconds and then gave her 20 distinct game ideas ranked in order of a market potential. So this first one that she's got, it's pop puzzle beat, and the fandom is pop music, so she knows which trending pop artist that's looking at people who like these trending pop artists. There are some similar games. She asked it to give her, well, what games are similar like this so that she can go and dive into what she might want to do that's similar to those or what she might want to do that's different. Gave her a description of the gameplay, some challenges, some of the pros and cons. So those challenges and asking for some of those pros and cons right up front can be really helpful to her as a business person, because she may look at that and say, you know what, I hadn't thought about licensing. That's going to be so prohibitively expensive that this could be a total non-starter. And that might steer her in the direction of a different fandom or a different style of game or something that might be a little bit different for what she's saying. Even though this game that it's described sounds really fun, it may be something that isn't as viable a concept for her. So it's giving her 20 of these. There's this other one is more focused on the crafting community and storytelling and enthusiasm. And this is going to be super popular for people who are really plugged into book talk and book reviews and the huge juggernaut of a market in romantasy fiction. This might be something that really appeals to them. So she can take all of these ideas, read through them, kind of pick a few that she might want to do, take a look at those, and then go a little bit further. And I have here that I will post along with this. Here is this chat. You can read all of her game ideas and see what that looks like, what that work would look like of taking some of this in. This might even help you refine what you ask for. Maybe 20 is too many to start with. Maybe she should have started with just like 6 and refined from there and gone from there. This can give you a good way of thinking about that. She could have asked for 100 different ideas and then gone from there. That is one of the real values of something like ChatGPT or Gemini, of these tools. You can really ask them to generate a lot of content for you to then sift through. So that's where she got, and it gives her a really nice place to start. And then her next step might be, okay, well, what do I do next? How do I take this research into the next phase? And she can actually use the tool to ask that question and say, what kind of secondary business research should I do to further develop these ideas? And it gives her this really nice list of things that she might want to look into: industry market reports, competitive analysis, demographic studies, fandom specific insights. She could dive into any one of these and ask for more detail about, well, where might I find something like that that's publicly available, something that I can access that's not behind a paywall. So this is what I mean by it can really help guide some of your traditional research strategies and tactics in a more efficient way. What she can do with that. So looking at some of these, she might be able to take her thing to the next step. So this is a really good way to use ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity as an ideation for that ideation phase. When you're thinking about this in business, yes, this is a little bit of pre-business, like pre-research, what she's getting, but it can really jumpstart a business plan and really develop a lot of momentum and excitement around something. Once she's settled on one of the ideas, she can start going through some of the more deliberate tactics to fine tune it. She can think about scope. She can think about how could she make this really simple and easy, something to get to market as fast as possible. She could think about how could she make it as elaborate and cool as possible, something that would really excite her target audience. And she can use this tool to look at that spectrum and understand and then decide where she wants to go with it. So this is one way of doing using AI. This is our first example. And for our next example, I'm going to show you how I refined that first tool. So for the next example, this is the mid-level person who is in sales, selling cloud-based accounting software, and they want to really start thinking about what's going to happen over the next couple of quarters. So when you have an idea, here's what I want to do. Here's who I am, what I want to do. You can ask the tools to help you develop a better prompt. Ask the model to help do it for you. So I asked Gemini this, and I'll pause and let you read. So here is what Gemini came back, and even this gives me some guidance to how to think about this. I know I'm going to have to look at this problem from a couple of different viewpoints. I can start with just give me the lay of the land, that really broad one. I might want to look at the market. I might want to look at the competitive analysis or the economic impact, what's going on economically that's going to really impact my sales and my strategy. I love that this structure itself starts to communicate a lot of avenues for further research and what you're going to do. So I picked this one, the mid-level business development planner, and I focused on the economic growth. So here's the prompt that I used, and I'll pause and let you read it at a scale that you actually can read it here. And you'll note again, there's the context and framing, what you're looking for, the structure that you're looking for, and what else you need to understand with this. So here's what you're asking for. And I will, this is one of the first things that it returned back, something that I really want to call your attention to, which I think is really important to understand that when I asked Gemini to execute that prompt, it told me, hey, I don't have access to real-time access to databases like Statista and IBISWorld in the way a subscriber would. Some of the information may come from those, but I can't look at those databases. It's telling you that it's really great as a research assistant, but it cannot directly access some of those databases. So it's best used in conjunction with these resources. I was really impressed to see that Gemini can recognize that limitation for research and suggest ways around it, saying, well, here's what I can do. And then going even further, it can say, I can give you a structured approach and suggest resources that you can use to execute that research effectively. It's a detailed plan that you can follow. And in between here, I actually asked, it gave me an outline, and I said, hey, those are great, but can you give me actual links to some of these things? And it says, no, I can't provide a guaranteed to work link. They change, everything gets moved, things gets updated, and things are behind paywalls. But I can tell you where to go specifically and what to search for. So this is giving you, it's really helping you develop that step-by-step process that you'll need to take in a lot of this information. Then once you have that, you could come back to Gemini and say, here's what I learned, here's what I've got, what can we do with this? How can we explore this further? And this chat is also in this document, so you can come in here and look at how I refined the prompt, what options I got here, how the prompt came out, that caveat that it told me, and what I could specifically do in order to develop my knowledge about this space. So I thought that was really a good one. I'm going to now show you our third example. Is Claude. This is that third person who's trying to conduct secondary research to make, and I want them to make my prompt more useful. So just like I did before, I'm going to ask it to refine the prompt for me. So I'm using Claude. So I gave it this really general, here's what I am. I haven't really thought too much about these, but these are some of the things I know. It was able to break that down for me and say, okay, you're looking at industry dynamics, external factors, the economic outlook, emerging trends. Here's what you might be looking for. And then it includes this nice note in the prompt saying, hey, look for some data-backed insights and cite your sources and cite the studies that you reference so that the user, the person, can go back and find those original sources. So I also asked the same prompt refining prompt for Perplexity, the other tool that I really like. This is one of the reasons I recommend that when you're getting started, try your prompts with a couple of different tools to see where they overlap, what's different. You know, we have economic conditions and market trends and competitive landscape. This one is asking for, it's going to ask you for a specific pestle analysis that might not have occurred to you. And now you know, oh, maybe I can ask it for something like that. The industry analysis. And this one also suggests that it include not only those relevant sources, citing reputable sources, but including statistics and charts and graphs, things that can really help enhance the analysis. So you can then create a prompt that takes what you really need from each one of those sources. I gave it to Gemini as well, because I love how Gemini gives you a theme, gives you options and a theme with each one. So I think it's a really nice way to see different ways of approaching writing a prompt that can take you on to that next step. This, and I'll go into our response because there's something I want to show you. So I gave it this prompt, and then I asked for a result of this prompt, and it gave me this result. And, you know, I'm going to take my time and read through all of this. Then I asked a follow-up question. I'd like to know where some of the information came from. How did you arrive at listing the shift toward usage-based pricing? That was one of the things that they pointed out here. There's going to be a shift toward usage-based pricing. Where'd you get that? Why are you thinking that? And Claude responds in a very similar and transparent way to the way that Google did. And I'll make this a little bit larger, where it says, hey, I need to be direct. I don't have access to those sources. I'm making that, drawing on my general training for this. And it's a good teaching moment to know that using tools like this can be really useful. But if you need more accurate pricing, you're going to have to go look for some of those industry reports. You might have to review public financial statements. So it can give you the direction of where it might think you want to go. And then you may have to follow up on that. You may have to, you know, give it that context, have that conversation. So when you give it that, you know, that context and you have those conversations, really think about it in the way that you thought about using someone for help by having a back and forth. Don't treat it in the same way that you treat your search engines, where you put something in, a sentence or two, and it's going to give you back some magic document and give you everything you need. Really use this tool to its highest and best purpose by interacting with it more than you may expect to in the beginning. You can also use it as a source discovery tool. So ask it not only where is it getting that information, asking you to point it to documents, but you can say, I am looking for the people who collect this information. I'm looking for sources that write on this or report on this regularly, or people who publish this kind of data, and see if it can direct you to some of those sources. Be on the lookout for things that sometimes will, the journal that they mentioned may exist, but the actual article won't. The person they mentioned may exist, or the reporter may exist, but the piece that they're referring to won't. But it can be a really good source discovery tool. That is one of the most challenging parts of research, is finding where to go, knowing where to go to try and find some information. Before we go, I have just a few more things for you, but I wanted to make sure that everyone has seen some of these tools. If it's your first time looking at AI tools, I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to at least see what these look like. I have a couple of tabs here open. One of them is this one useful thing. Make sure you come in here and take a look at this article. 15 times to use it, 5 times not to. The other article that I mentioned, on which AI to use now, updated really, really recently. This is ChatGPT. This is what this looks like. And here's what I was mentioning earlier about the difference between doing a web search or a reasoning thing. Like, what do you want this to do? Do you want it to think about your project? Or are you asking for a really simple factual question? And that can change the kind of information that it gives. Here's our document that has all 3 of the examples that I showed today. So you can come back and take a look if you so choose. This is what Claude looks like. Here's where I said, help me revise this prompt. And it gave me a more detailed prompt that I went through and then went further into. And here's Perplexity. This is a slightly different one. It gives me a much larger typeface here. And then it goes into this answer and talks about what it's doing. It does that political SWOT, that SWOT analysis, that pestle analysis that it mentioned doing. It's giving me a start here. All of these in Perplexity are nice. It's linking me. It's telling me where it's getting that information so I can follow up and decide if I think that is applicable, if I think if that's trustworthy, and take it from there. One thing about when you use these tools to execute these kind of analytical frameworks for you, these are really the start of that. Not all of these will apply to you, and all of them, even if this one does apply to you, you're going to want to go deeper. This is not the kind of thing that you copy and paste and dump into an appendix or dump into a report. This is really an invitation to explore further. So approach this with that spirit of curiosity and wondering what they mean by this. What do you mean? Where did you get that? What do you think about that? And then finally, here's what Gemini looks like. Here's some of my earlier, here's how we revise this prompt. And then it dives into that prompt and shows me the different things that it was doing. So I wanted to make sure at least everyone has at least had a look at those tools if you had not before. I want to leave you with just a couple of thoughts. One is that cultivating curiosity. All of these tools, they are the new floor. This is not the ceiling. This is not a place to stop your research. It's an aid in helping you think, as that earlier line said. It's a way to think with you, not for you. And I really want you to be curious. I want you to channel your inner toddler who's always asking why, and channel that inner teenager who's always saying, so what? What does that matter? So what? Ask those questions. Cultivate that curiosity so that you can really leverage the power of this tool to help you not take the first answer, but really explore what it's trying to get you to or where you might be able to go. That allows you to layer on your human imagination and your human curiosity and your human judgment on top of this artificial intelligence and take it exponentially further than you could with just the artificial intelligence alone. I will leave you with this one final quote from our friend Ethan. And he's talking here about that point I was making about really making sure that you're doing the work yourself. And I want to do that. I want to leverage that in two ways. One, I want to say that, yes, this is absolutely true for knowledge acquisition. And I think you should apply that to your acquisition of how to use these AI tools. I think it's a really good thing that this is a learning process, and you're going to find it more helpful in some cases and less helpful in others. But the work of trying it, the work of doing it, is where you will discover that, where that's going to really happen. And how that is really going to become its best self. The last thing I want to leave with you with is a theory of mine. I don't have a study for this. I don't have anything that I can point to and say, but my suspicion is that most people who are using AI tools are not carefully reading the output. They're not taking what that AI returns back to them and engaging with it. And in my opinion, you are leaving a lot of the power on the table when you do that, when you don't question it, when you don't ask for follow-up questions, when you don't dive in more and really engage with the content that it's giving you and have that back and forth conversation that doesn't stop after one question and really goes deeper. I think that's where a lot of the real magic is going to lie. So I invite you to not only engage with this, not only ask follow-up questions, read what it says. That's going to give you an edge over all the people that aren't. So give this a try and spend a little time working with these tools. And finally, tell me what you think. I truly and honestly believe that attention is the most valuable thing we have. So I really appreciate you sticking with me for these last 45 minutes. And if you are using any of these for your business research, write me and tell me about your experience. If you have any insights to share that you want to share with your fellow students or other people who are doing work in this space, I am really curious to see over the coming weeks, months, years, how much this is going to radically change the way we do this kind of work and how it changes our research habits. So I love to hear people's experiences. Cheers, everyone.